In this video, I'm going to be describing how to design the event declaration form. I give you some tips and tricks on how you can create a smart, dynamic form that's simple and easy for users to complete. We've got some great help and advice here on this page, and we'll be referencing and talking about these with examples of how we designed the form for Farageland, our example country, to demonstrate OpenCRBS. So within our requirements templates, there is one for declaration forms. So check out those forms via this link. And I have that template already open here. And we've uploaded it to Google Drive. That's the tool we mainly use, but you can upload to OneDrive or work on it locally in Excel. So yeah, here's the template. And this is where you would document all the requirements for the declaration form. So you're going to have to look at existing legislation, look at the existing declaration form and what's captured on there. And the first thing you really should be asking yourself is, what do we need to capture? Do we need to capture exactly what's on the existing declaration form? Or is this an opportunity to really rethink what's important to record? Do we need to capture all the existing pieces of information? Can we reduce that and make the form more simple to complete? So here is where you can start to define what's required. So just some obvious ones. We've got the first name and last name of the child. Take a little step back. OpenCRBS works with pages, so we have pages of questions. Instead of having it all on one screen, you can add them to specific pages, and that becomes useful because you can start to conditionally show and hide certain pages based on user responses, and we'll show you some examples of that. The first option you can choose to have, and some countries choose to have, is an introduction page. So this can just be text, helping and reminding the registration agent to share the process to the informant of what to expect with regards to completing the declaration. So just an information page, you don't have to include this. In Farageland, our page 2 is the child's details page. And here we capture everything to do with the child's details. So the pages really keep the user focused on a specific topic of what needs to be recorded. So we have our first name and last name, and in this template we define the type of field. So this is a free text input field. So let's actually jump into the product and see what that looks like. So this is a birth event we're looking at. That's the information page I spoke of. This is what it looks like in the final product. And then we have the child's details page, and as we said, we had first name and last name. These are both free field text input. Two things have popped up. Required for registration, so this asterisk indicates required mandatory fields. So we jump back into our template. We record this when we're defining the requirements before configuration, what fields need to be mandatory. So here we have this check mark that indicates to the developer that they need to make sure that this has the asterisk and has the required for registration validation logic. So that's that check mark. If we look at the date of birth here, this is a date input. So the developer knows that I need to use a date input with the label date of birth. And there's a validation rule here. So this cannot be a future date. Obviously, I can't register a child's birth on a future date. So we want to ensure quality data captured at source. So the digital system can obviously do a lot of validation, making the registration clerk, any kind of validator's life a lot easier. They can be a lot more confident in the declaration from the start. So we're validating at source, making sure any dates inputted are not in the future. This is also mandatory. There's no conditional logic, and we'll come on to examples of that. And both the first name, last name, and date of birth are on the certificate. Not so important for the configuration of the declaration form, but exhaustively defining the requirements. So anyone looking at this who's also configuring the certificate can also double check and understand what's required on the certificate. This next one here, reason for delayed registration. This is a free text input, but there's a conditionality defined on this field. So we only want to show this field if today's date is greater than the delayed registration time period based on the date of birth. So if the user enters a date of birth which is outside our delayed registration time period, so maybe this date of birth was 4 years ago, if the date of birth was 4 years ago, because anything after 1 year in Farageland we deem a delayed registration, this field will show. So it's hidden by default. It shows based on the conditionality of the date of birth, and then the user is then prompted to enter the reason for delayed registration, and it's mandatory. So it's an example of how the form can be smart, it can be dynamic. So based on certain inputs from the user, we can show and hide questions, whole pages, and options. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to make the form very streamlined. The user is kind of handheld throughout the form to make sure the correct data is captured based on every potential scenario. For sex, this is an example of a select, a drop-down select, and our two options are male and female. Place of birth, again, is a select, it's a drop-down health institution, residential address, and other address. And there's actually some conditional logic on this. So if health institution is selected, an additional field appears below, and the user is prompted to search for a health institution from Farageland's reference data. So there's no need to type it in, the name of the health institution. We're ensuring quality data because they have to select from an existing hospital defined in the reference data. Attendant birth again uses reference data. It has these 4 options or none. So it's important, for statistical purposes, for anything for statistical data, use a reference list. Don't include a free text input, because then the quality of the data just won't be up to scratch. You're going to have to do further data cleansing as part of it, Vital statistics export. Using reference data means quality data captured at source. Another example, number one to call out is weight of birth on the child details page. This is a number input, which means only a number can be entered into the field. It has a postfix, so prefix is like you could put a currency symbol before the field. Postfix is, in this case, a unit, kilograms, after the field. And this could be grams if that's what you choose to document the weight of birth in. And this also has a validation rule of between 0 and 6 kilograms. The type of birth and the weight of birth are examples of optional fields, so there's no asterisks, so it doesn't need to be completed. Our next page is informant type, so we capture details about the informant. And here's an example of where we do the hard work for the user. So in the background, we're going to be defaulting the data. In this case, if the informant is the mother or father, we don't need to capture the informant's details. We're going to use what's captured on the mother's and father's page and duplicate it and apply it to the informant. So the registration agent doesn't need to type out the mother's details on this page and then have to enter them again on the mother's details page. An example here is an example of where we're duplicating, we're doing the hard work for the user. And I'll demonstrate how that looks. So the first question is informant type. So this is actually a slight mistake. Let's just fix this. This is a select. It's a select now. It was a radio group, but we've now put this into a select. And we have mother, father, grandfather, grandmother, and you can choose what you want these options to be. If the informant is grandfather or mother, then we show these fields By default, these are hidden. You can see here, show if informant type is other. So by default, they're hidden. And let's actually see that. I'm going to skip to the informants page. So they're hidden. First question, relationship to child. If I select mother, nothing else shows. We just ask for the informant, the mother's phone number and her email address. The same for father. But if the informant is not the mother and father, we show those fields and we want to capture information about the grandmother who is informing about this event. Back to mother. The reason being, we're going to be capturing the details about the mother on this page. So again, we don't want to be duplicating the effort of the agent completing this form. We're going to save steps, we're going to save time and effort. And this is an example of how the form can be smart. It can dynamically show and hide fields and pages. So use that tool, that capability, to help the user. One thing to call out on dates of births. We recognise in some countries, older individuals don't know the exact date of birth, but they do know their age. So we have this pattern, this design pattern you can choose to use, where we ask for the date of birth, because it's important to capture the date of birth if it is known. But if it is not, there is a checkbox below it called exact date unknown. And when the user selects exact date unknown, the age in years field shows below. So there's conditionality on this field. It is hidden by default. If exact date of birth is unknown, then show this field. And let's see that in action. So this is on the mother's details page. So I don't know the exact date of birth, but we want to encourage capturing of it if possible. In this case, we don't know the exact date of birth of the mother. You can see here, age of mother is now available. So that's an example of how, again, we're trying to capture quality data. Date of birth is a more accurate piece of information to help accurately identify the mother's identity. But if it's not known, then we can capture it, the age. We're not just asking for the age, we're trying to encourage date of birth, if known. Not much else to share on mother and father. We've spoken about the different field types. Maybe we talk about the father's details, available and unavailable. So in this example here, relationship to child is mother. So we click continue and go to the father's details page. We have this checkbox, father's details are not available. So we recognize that these mandatory fields about the father might not be known. So in that scenario, we want to be able to complete this registration, but not have to complete these currently mandatory fields for registration. So by clicking father's details not available, those inputs disappear, and we're prompted to add a reason why the father's details are not available. It's important to include these kind of workarounds to explore the edge cases beyond a happy path where both the mother's and father's details are known. You really need to consider the edge cases and make sure you can still complete the declaration form and still register vital events per your legislation. In example, in Farajland, you don't need the father's details to register the vital event, and the same for mother in certain scenarios. So really explore how can you accommodate for those edge cases, and this is the way we've handled it in Farajland. Our last main page is the supporting documents page. So this is where we define the type of supporting documents required. Again, these can be conditionally showing and hiding. So the proof of informant's ID, we only show this option. Show if the informant is not the mother and father. So back to that relationship to child question, that select actually influences a lot of what happens in the form. showing and hiding checkboxes, showing and hiding pages, and here it's showing and hiding this supporting document upload request. Let's just show you that page for context. It's this page here, upload supporting documents. We have proof of birth, proof of mother's ID, proof of father's ID, and other. There's no request for proof of informant's ID because we know the informant is the mother. So you don't need to upload the informant's ID. If I go back, if I change this to grandfather and click continue, I'm going to quickly skip back to the supporting documents page. We now show proof of informant's ID. And that logic was defined in this requirements gathering template by stating here show informant. So that helps the developer to understand that logic and make sure they include it in the final configured form. As part of this definition here, you can choose what options you want to show in the supporting document. So for proof of birth, in Farage we have notification birth. It's just a standard supporting document given at hospitals and signed by the birth attendant there. And that's what that's what happens in Farage. That's what gets uploaded as a scanned or photographed to and linked to the registration. For proof of mother's ID, we have national ID, passport, birth certificate, but you can choose what these options are as per your country requirements. And then finally, the last thing you should be defining in this declaration form template is whether you want to request the informant's digital signature. And this shows on the review page. Let's jump to that. If I scroll to the bottom, we see here signatures, signature of the informant. So we're saying, this is the review page where we review everything that's been captured. In this example, we haven't captured much because we've been quickly running through and defining, to describe the logic that you can add to your declaration form. But here, I, the undersigned, hereby declare that the particulars in this form are true and correct to the best of my knowledge. And then the informant is prompted to sign on a tablet or with a digital signing pad in the registration office, and that gets appended to the registration, mimicking the concept of the informant signing the paper declaration. We're kind of signing the digital declaration here, or they can choose and upload a scan or photo of their signature, and that too gets appended to the registration. So that's what you define here. You can choose whether it's mandatory or optional. But yeah, if you're choosing not to include this option, then I would expect to remove this so the developer knows to not include that in your configuration. So I think that covers everything I wanted to cover. Really, OpenCRVS provides a lot of flexibility to really configure the form as you wish. Really think about what questions do we need to ask. What's a really kind of smart way to show and hide pieces of information instead of just putting it all available, and the user then has to decide what needs to be completed, what doesn't. You can really kind of use conditional logic to show and hide questions and make the form really smart and dynamic as we describe it. So yeah, thank you very much, and good luck.